This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Is it just me, or are you also disappointed that first dog Major Biden won't be taking an oath tomorrow? Anyway, here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, preparing for a historic inauguration that will look quite a bit different than ceremonies of years past. Also, the strength of an internet connection can make or break a child's virtual schooling experience. We look at the efforts to keep kids connected. But first, here's what you need to know right now. There's a special tribute today to honor the lives lost to COVID-19 in the US. It comes on the same day the country crossed 400,000 deaths. It's a milestone that once seemed unimaginable, but here we are, less than a year since the coronavirus pandemic began. For the first time ever, the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial was lit with 400 lights. Soon to be President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris both made an appearance.
Between sundown and dusk, let us shine the lights in the darkness along the sacred pool of reflection. Remember all whom we lost.
Other well-known buildings like the Space Needle in Seattle and the Empire State Building also joined in the tribute. While the US makes up only 4% of the world's population, it accounts for roughly 20% of recorded COVID deaths worldwide. Tonight's memorial comes as Biden works to show a serious shift in the government's handling of the pandemic as he prepares to take office tomorrow.
As I conclude my term as the 45th President of the United States, I stand before you truly proud of what we have achieved together. We did what we came here to do, and so much more.
Today marked President Donald Trump's final full day in office, and he spent it issuing a slew of pardons, none of which included himself, which he had previously mentioned as a possibility. Notably, Trump's former advisor Steve Bannon and Trump's personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani did not make the cut, and neither did Joe Exotic, aka the Tiger King from season 1 of the pandemic. As for Trump's future out of office, he still has an impeachment trial hanging over him. The House has yet to formally send the charge of incitement of insurrection to the Senate, but for the first time today, we got a glimpse into Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's thinking.
The last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
While Trump would obviously no longer need to be removed as president, if convicted, he could lose the ability to ever run for office again. At least a dozen National Guard members were removed from presidential inauguration security roles after FBI screenings found inappropriate comments or texts, according to a Pentagon official. It's worth noting, no plot against the inauguration or president-elect was found. It's just an example of the heightened screening and precautions in place ahead of the presidential inauguration after pro-Trump extremists attacked the Capitol 2 weeks ago. Downtown DC is totally locked down ahead of the inauguration as thousands of National Guard members take over streets and shops close up for safety. The National Mall will also be closed to the public, but a field of flags was added for the celebration. It features more than 191,000 U.S. flags meant to symbolize U.S. states and territories to represent all the Americans who could not physically attend. Just a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. has surpassed 400,000 deaths from the virus. The vaccine rollout is underway, but hasn't yet turned the tide in the U.S. fight against the coronavirus. So, how did we get here? Newsy's Amber Strong spoke to Surgeon General Jerome Adams to answer that question.
We remain in a very dark winter.
As the U.S. surpasses 400,000 COVID-19 deaths, officials say the country needs to brace for the weeks ahead.
I worry desperately in the next 6 to 12 weeks we're going to see a situation with this pandemic unlike anything we've seen yet to date.
This is not the time to let your guard down.
The cause of the concern, new strains of the virus that are spreading at an alarming rate. One health official's fear could push the U.S. death toll beyond 500,000 by mid-February.
We're going to suddenly see these variants come to play that, based on the experience we've seen in Europe, in particular South Africa, these variants can substantially increase the number of cases. The challenge is how many.
Incoming director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, says mobilizing all available resources for distributing vaccines will be a top priority for the Biden administration. including the use of Public Health Commission Corps officers. U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Jerome Adams, who oversees those officers, tells Newsy the Commission Corps is already assisting with COVID-19 in various capacities.
We're trying to get people out there where we can. One of the challenges that you've seen in this surge is that you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. And if a public health service officer is working in Bureau of Prisons to take care of someone with COVID, or they're standing up a pop-up testing site and you pull them away to open up a vaccination site, then you're helping in one area and hurting in another.
In a new Surgeon General's report released Tuesday, Adams lays out the economic disparities between poor and wealthier communities that helped exacerbate the pandemic, particularly in neighborhoods of color. He says many of the fixes start with businesses implementing long-term policy changes, like paid maternity leave. But the short-term answer to the nation's current virus crisis remains the same.
Wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance, wait to gather, and when it's your turn, get vaccinated, because that's how we end this pandemic.
Amber Strong, Newsy, Northern Virginia.
When you're back, we'll take a look at how one person in the outgoing administration is spending his last moments in office. What better day to push back on multiculturalism than the day before a woman whose parents are Jamaican and Indian immigrants becomes vice president? Here's what's trending. In a tweet sent Tuesday morning, outgoing Secretary of State Mike Pompeo specifically criticized multiculturalism, which is literally just the presence of distinct cultural or ethnic groups within a society. It's hard to say what prompted Pompeo to pop off about all this, but some users pointed out it's an odd tone to strike a day after celebrating MLK on his other account and his State Department account. But maybe most odd of all was the fact that America is a culturally diverse nation. The US is home to nearly 60 million Hispanic people. 11 million people say they are married to somebody with a different ethnic or racial background, and most Americans see cultural diversity as a good thing. Here in our physical world, we are anticipating an inauguration lacking the typical crowds, what with the pandemic and security threats and general mayhem. But in the virtual world of Snapchat, oh, it's gonna be turned up. The Biden Inaugural Committee is planning an inauguration Snapchat filter to let folks snag a selfie from the National Mall, sort of. I'm sure it'll be all the fun of attending the event, just with 100% fewer security checkpoints. This might be the savviest bit of youth outreach from the Biden team since they released Animal Crossing merch. Yet another step in an uphill battle to make Joe Biden seem cool. NFL concussions and concussion protocols have trended over the last few days because of how the league handled injuries from two of the biggest football stars. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson and Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Pat Mahomes went down over the weekend and were immediately evaluated for concussions. Neither of them returned to their games. People praise the NFL for their handling of Jackson and Mahomes' injuries, saying that it shows progress in how the concussion-riddled league polices people who might have head injuries. Concussion protocols came into play in 2009 and have been tweaked ever since. Also, a player doesn't actually have to have a concussion to be ruled out of play. It's uncertain if Mahomes will play next weekend, but the hope is that concussion protocols will keep him in the game and CTE-free in the years to come. Being in DC right now, it's hard to see exactly where people might be able to actually watch the inauguration. The National Mall is closed, and DC's mayor and other leaders have actually explicitly deterred people from attending in person. But even with all the heightened security, there will be areas set aside for people to protest during the inauguration. Newsy's Willie James Inman tells us more about these First Amendment zones.
Despite major security concerns and exactly just 2 weeks after the siege on the U.S. Capitol, authorized protesters will be allowed to assemble in so-called First Amendment zones, about half a mile away from the site of the inauguration. Columbus Circle in front of Union Station is one of the designated protest sites, and according to a permit, the Working Families Party is one of the organizers of this protest, and they're going to install a large jumbotron for passersby to see and for people to come and gather around and to take part in this protest. That specific group was originally going to be allowed to assemble along Pennsylvania Avenue, but the jumbo screen isn't allowed in the, quote, red zone, where access is heavily restricted due to heightened security concerns. A National Park Service spokesperson told Newsy that up to 100 people are allowed at each site, but it's unclear if the public will be allowed inside this secure zone, which is considered the, quote, green zone, where traffic is mainly restricted to businesses and residents. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser previously asked for protest permits to be canceled.
For a couple of reasons. For the security of the event.
But the National Park Service says they have security in place to prevent permitted demonstrations from getting close to the Capitol. The big question remains, how can Americans protest the 59th presidential inauguration? And the answer seems to be anywhere but in the nation's capital city. Willie James Inman, Newsy, Washington.
When you're back, we'll take a second to acknowledge the star player in the very first inauguration. Yeah, you heard that right. Spot, Barney, Miss Beasley, India, Ophelia, Sonny, Bo. You recognize those names? Those were and are the presidential pets from George W. Bush and Barack Obama's White House terms. It's been 4 years since we've seen any presidential pets, and all of that is set to change once Joe Biden officially takes office. Newsy's Stephanie Liebergen tells us how one of Biden's dogs is making history.
Pets are coming back to the White House, and the new president's younger dog, Major, is making history when he moves in.
This is just such a monumental moment for shelter dogs and rescue animals everywhere, with this spotlight on Major's rags to riches tale.
Major Biden will be the first rescue dog to live in the White House. He and his 5 litter mates were just a few weeks old when they were surrendered to the Delaware Humane Association in 2018. Because Major and his siblings needed emergency medical care, DHA posted on social media to drum up donations and potential adopters.
Ashley Biden, Joe and Jill's daughter, ended up seeing the post, and somewhere along the way, she then must have shared it with her parents. On Easter Sunday, Joe and some of his grandkids knocked at the front door. Some of our staff at first thought, who's this guy at the door with these kids? Don't they know we're closed? And then when they got up, they realized who it was.
After fostering Major and making sure he got along with their older dog, Champ, the Bidens officially became his forever family.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
According to the ASPCA, approximately 6.5 million animals enter shelters in the U.S. each year, and about half of them are dogs. Since the pandemic began, millions of Americans started working from home, and animal rescue organizations were able to benefit from that. During 2020, more families volunteered to foster shelter animals, and adoptions increased too. The staff at DHA told me they're looking forward to Major Biden serving as an ambassador and spokesdog for rescue animals across the country.
We think people just don't realize there are animal shelters everywhere. There are thousands and thousands of dogs, cats, all different breeds of animals. Anything you might want, I promise you it's out there somewhere. You just have to do a little digging.
Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Washington.
Physical contact is, for the most part, out of the question right now. And one thing that's keeping us, forgive the pun, in the loop with each other is the internet. It's becoming pretty essential for school, work, and play, but a technology gap is keeping many Americans from getting online. National reporter Chloe Nordquist tells us more.
When we go to school, we get a lot of homework. Homework, all that homework.
Adapting to life online is something most of us have gone through at this point.
The first day it was chaos. So it's 10? You
Yes.
sure?
Yes.
All right. Kiss the brain. You kiss, there you go. Very good.
Including Claiborne Wade, along with his wife and 4 kids.
Either I'm checking emails in between class time of my kids with asking, Dad, how could you help me with this? Or, what's this letter or what's this word and how do you spell this? And I'll bring your drinks. To making sure, I have lunch ready for them on time, or even with breakfast.
This is day-to-day life for many in the pandemic, and it wouldn't be possible without access to the internet.
And if they don't have, internet, they can't do the work that they need to, succeed in school and ultimately succeed in life.
Claiborne is also a parent liaison at the nearby elementary school in Chicago, Illinois, amplifying the voices of parents in his community, many who had questions when classes went virtual.
I can't get in, how do I get in? My internet's not, working.
The reality was over 100,000 kids in Chicago alone were without internet.
across the city, 1 in 5 families were disconnected from the internet. But when you actually looked at specific neighborhoods, particularly black and brown neighborhoods, you saw as many as 1 in 3.
Daniel Anello is with Kids First Chicago, an advocacy organization that's spent the past 7 months working to get more kids connected.
The digital divide for us went from maybe number 6 or 7 on the list of priorities for our families to number 1.
It's all part of Chicago Connected, the city's program to provide no-cost internet to public school students.
Since we launched in July, we've been able to connect 35,000 households, which is approximately 55 to 60,000 students.
And more are brought online each day.
Internet has become more of a public need and utility.
Communities across America agree. Last November, voters in cities like Denver and Chicago approved referendums supporting community broadband by an overwhelming majority.
Just about everyone is frustrated with internet access.
Christopher Mitchell is with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. He's watching how different cities are handling internet access challenges both in the short term and long term.
Fundamentally, we don't really have a broadband problem. We have a poverty problem. We have a literacy challenge. But in the long term, we need to wrestle with the fact that we are not on a path right now of everyone having high quality, affordable access inside their homes, and we need to figure that out.
Chicago Connected has a model meant to be sustained for a long time, and other cities are following suit.
A number of cities have reached out to us.
Across the country, that there are, communities who don't have it. And, with Chicago taking the lead with providing internet to its families in underserved communities, other cities are, adopting the same, program that we have here. So I think that speaks volume to hear in the city.
With photojournalist Drew Snadicki, I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to give us a shout on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Standard messaging rates apply, and of course, tweet STOP to hear less from me. MLK's birthday is behind us, but the work he strived to accomplish in his lifetime is far from over. In the decades since his death, King's life and legacy have been flattened to really exclude the fact that he was hated by many Americans before and after being assassinated. But his vision of unity persists, especially in faith-based communities. National reporter Kai Beach takes us into an interfaith service that celebrates differences while speaking out against hate.
We who believe in freedom will not rest until it comes.
There's power in being part of change.
We all want to have unity, but at some point you have to start practicing it and coming together.
And this is putting aspiration into action. A religious service welcoming those of all faiths, held inside a synagogue and streamed online to celebrate a social justice icon.
Martin Luther King Jr. would be so happy to see Jews and Christians coming together for this common cause.
The Jewish, Baptist, and Methodist using the power of prayer and technology to spread the messages of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
It doesn't matter who you are or how you worship or what you do, we can still come together and celebrate somebody like Dr. King.
While much of the world is locked down during the COVID crisis, these different religious leaders are opening up conversations aimed at ending systemic racism.
To be the person in the gap that I want to see standing there.
While also celebrating Dr. King virtually.
While we're in the midst of the pandemic, there's also a global pandemic of racial justice, and we have to create a way to come together.
Ken Brown, senior pastor at Trinity United Methodist Church in Denver, Colorado, is helping create that unity by teaming up with people like student rabbi Colby Morris Dahari.
It is time we lead ourselves
during this emotional online service, which they hope helps inspire global change.
That's really our mission in our friendship and in our work, is to build these bridges between these groups.
Groups that might not be able to hold hands due to COVID.
Be a channel for love.
But can hold each other's hearts while honoring a hero.
To heal.
Singing group Spirit of Grace explains the importance.
Christians, Jews, blacks, whites, straights, it don't matter what you are. we can all get together and do something that is going to unify us.
I'm Kai Beach reporting.
There is a bond.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back for more in the Loop tomorrow, same time, same place. Also, you can catch our live inauguration coverage tomorrow morning featuring yours truly, wherever you watch Newsy. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.